Hi folks, the question for this round on the dark wheel is: does religion have a role to play in mankind's future? You'll find the dark wheel at thedarkwheel.wordpress.com, so go check it out and participate if you like. So this question, what's the future of religion? First of all, not everybody agrees on what the word religion actually means. Einstein, for instance, referred to himself as a religious man. He had an idea about God, but you would not have called him a monotheist. He described his God as something like the God of Spinoza, and Spinoza was a pantheist, meaning that God is inseparable from the universe. God is the universe is God. Einstein basically had a sense of the transcendent, and he referred to himself as a religious person. But a lot of the time, the word religion is really used to mean religion in the Western sense of authoritarian religion. The big three: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Monotheism, where God is basically a sky god, a deity who is a being who rules over the earth and the inhabitants of the earth, rules over the universe. So if we first of all tackle the question in those terms, is that kind of religion going to play a role in mankind's future? Well, I hope not. I hope that's on the way out. You know the pie chart that you can find in various places, you can find it online, I'm sure, where it shows all the various world religions, the population of the planet, and it's all sliced into all the world's religions, including atheism. And we see how much of the pie goes to Islam, how much of the pie goes to Christianity, how much of the pie goes to something like Buddhism. It'd be really interesting to get a look at that pie chart in the various decades throughout the 20th century and up to now, to kind of see it expand and contract, to see which beliefs are trending towards more supporters, more followers, and which beliefs are in decline. That would just be interesting to see. I'd be pretty confident that Christianity is in decline, and has been in decline basically since the rise of science. If you really compare nowadays to the position of dominance that Christianity held in Europe, particularly in the Middle Ages, it's really not the same kind of power today that it was back then. And of course back then it was enforced politically in a way that it is not now. But I think it's fair to say that science has been the main thing that has been eroding authoritarian religion, because to some extent the claims of science go against the claims of religious dogma that is supposedly inspired by God. So you tend to have to pick a side, and rational people tend to side with science because, let's face it, science is an awful lot more reliable and testable than the claims of a sky god, would seem to be coming up wanting. Islam would be a worry for me, because Islam seems to be quite strong and is also quite militant, and Muslims tend to breed a lot, and Islam could become a force to be reckoned with in the future by sheer strength of numbers. And I think that's something that we need to keep our eye on. What exactly we should do about that, I don't know, because I like to, as much as possible, I like to promote pluralism, the freedom to believe what you wish. But when my life is under threat by a belief system that wants to take charge of my life and rule over me and demand that I follow its precepts, then I start to have a problem even with the idea of religious pluralism. So that's just something to watch out for. But I think generally the world is trending towards more and more secularization. I think atheism is on the rise. And while that is positive in one way, in that more nails are going in the coffin of authoritarian religion, I think there is a great danger of using science as the only possible replacement for authoritarian religion, when, to be honest, there's many other ways of looking at what people call spirituality. And I mentioned Einstein, he's kind of the perfect example. A lot of atheists, you see, I think have no real sense of the transcendent, no real sense that there's anything other than a material basis to reality that is purely mechanistic. The whole thing is clockwork. Consciousness is clockwork. It's just an illusion, basically. You're nothing more than an automaton. The universe runs like a machine. There's nothing deeper than that. And that's the typical materialistic monism that you see in Western atheism. The flip side of that is the Eastern kind of monism, which is more idealistic. It's more the idea that mind is primary, matter secondary. That true reality is mind, and matter is an experience of mind. I'm what you call a neutral monist, in that I recognize that both go together. It's not a causal relationship where mind gave rise to matter or matter gave rise to mind. It's a goes with relationship. Mind and matter are aspects of the same thing, just as space and time are aspects of the same thing and don't make sense unless understood in relationship to each other. So my sense of the spiritual or the religious, I'm basically just confronted by the mysteriousness of this thing called life and the universe. We don't know what it is. We don't really know how it came to be. And we know a little bit about what we call a singularity, but that's really just a description. More than anything, it really doesn't help us get to terms with why this all is. It's a big mystery, and I think it's impenetrable. I don't think you can get to the bottom of it because you're confronted by the infinite. And here we are as little finite creatures dealing with a world around us of apparent separation and duality that we somehow have to understand as existing within a framework of non-duality, of monism. All reality is a kind of field. And Brian Lake in his video alluded to this as well. You know, that quantum physics seems to be getting us to the same kind of understanding that the ancient mystics in the East, and to some extent in the West as well, would have had, where all reality is one. There's no separation. So whether you think of that as a universal mind or a unified field, it's all pointing towards the same thing, the one from which separateness comes. So that's kind of my religion, if you want to call it a religion. A sense of monism, a sense of unity, of non-separation between all things across space and time. And mind, if you want to include that as a kind of a trinity almost, mind, space and time, all as aspects of the one essence that is both you and everything that exists. So, I think this kind of spirituality is on the rise now. You know, it was more popular in the East than it was in the West, but I think it's, you know, I hear about people, you know, celebrities that are getting to grips with this kind of thing even that you wouldn't have heard about 2 decades ago. Like, Jim Carrey is a big supporter of Eckhart Tolle, and even though I've been critical of Eckhart Tolle, he is coming from the basic sort of monistic perspective, regardless of how many wrong turns I think he's making. You have Russell Brand, who's an interesting character coming from the same sort of song sheet. the comedian from here in the UK. There's David Icke, of course, whom I have a sort of an ambivalent attitude towards, but he is basically coming from the same idea that we're all one, regardless of what you might think of the reptilians and all that stuff. So this is the new religion, but it's a very old religion. And I think it's the most rational, and I think it's where the world is heading. And I sort of, you know, I'm kind of almost alluding to the idea that there's a spiritual awakening on the horizon, and I don't know how much I believe that. I don't know that I do. It's kind of like I'm not sure whether this is always going to be a kind of a fringe belief, an esoteric belief, or whether it's ever going to become mainstream. I hope that it will become mainstream, but that's by no means certain. And I think authoritarian religion will continue to exist in the future, but it will be on the fringes, in the same way that you might find the occasional Zoroastrian still alive in the world today, but not very many. We're going to see Christianity just, you know, becoming less and less supported as the years go on. And the big interest of me is the clash between Christianity and atheism, and understanding that it's not just two choices. And that was what confused me through most of my life, the thought that I just had two choices: materialism, nihilism on one side, and authoritarian religion on the other, with a view of man that was poisonous, that was impossible to put into practice, and that was very unnatural. So I couldn't find a happy place anywhere in those two paradigms until I understood that it wasn't two choices. Okay, just some thoughts on the future of religion. My question for the next round on the Dark Wheel is, what would it take to create a utopia?